was in a wheelchair, obviously you wouldn't say to them, go climb those stairs, because they can't. So you would build a ramp for them. And I also need a ramp, but it's a little different because I can walk. But I need one for my mind, so I need one for math. Dyscalculia affects nearly 5% of the population, but no one knows about it. That's the same as dyslexia, by the way. It's most commonly described as math dyslexia, but it's not really the same thing at all. Dyslexia affects the development of the temporal lobe, which we consider the language part of the brain. Dyscalculia affects the angular gyrus and the temporal lobe, which in short terms is the math part of the brain. You can tell if someone has dyscalculia at different points in their life. When they're in primary and elementary school, counting and acquiring a number sense is a sign of it. In middle and high school, not having a good sense of direction, poor hand and eye coordination, and gross and fine motor skills are signs. Some people with dyscalculia also struggle with social skills. For me, I have some problems with number sense, direction, hand-eye coordination, and gross and fine motor skills. Number sense is the one that sounds a little confusing, but trust me, it's way more confusing for me than you. So if you showed me the number 10, it would take me a little longer than most people to understand that that is the quantity of what you're showing me. Direction is pretty simple. Sometimes I just get a little lost. And with hand-eye coordination, sometimes I think something is farther away or closer to me than it actually is. For fine motor skills, I have trouble with handwriting, and I can't cut things with scissors easily. Don't ask me to. The social part of it is, for me, that when I fail so much in an area I don't like, it makes me feel really dumb. Because I have to work 50 times harder in an area that I hate to get a good grade. When I was in 4th grade, I went to get diagnostically tested with a psychologist. I knew math was really hard for me, but I didn't really understand why, because I was doing well in other subjects. And actually, I found out what my diagnosis was on accident. Don't get me wrong, my parents told me about it and everything, and I had heard them talking about it, but being the 9-year-old me I didn't really care. The day I found out, I was looking for something on my dad's computer, and I found a folder with my name on it. Obviously, I opened it because it had my name on it. And I saw a document with my name on it, which obviously I opened again. So I opened it, and I saw on the front page, dyscalculia, and I didn't even know how to pronounce it, so I knew it wasn't a good word. So I read the rest of the report and felt angry, sad, fear, and very confused. So one thing people always ask me is, what does it feel like to have dyscalculia? And really the only way I can explain it to people is that it's like I'm drowning. My lungs are filling up with water and I can't breathe. But then, when I look up and I look around me, everyone's doing fine. But they're talking in another language that I don't know. So I can't even understand what or why I don't understand. But I want to understand because I'm hungry for that knowledge. So I'm choking on all of that. I'm choking on the fact that everyone is doing fine and I'm helpless, just floating there. It's quite suffocating, actually. Math anxiety. I'm just going to be really short and sweet with this one. Math anxiety sucks. A lot. It's honestly the worst. Math anxiety is, in the simplest terms, the anxiety you get from doing math or being in math class. For me, it's both. It still scares the living daylights out of me to think about math tests or going up to the board in math and everything like that. The first couple of months after I was diagnosed, if the teacher asked me to go up to the board, I would say no and just sit there. To this day, I still hate doing it, but if my teacher asks me to, I'll do it because I know that it's okay if I don't get it right all the time. As difficult and sometimes annoying it is for me to be different, not everyone is out to get you. It feels like that for a little while, but I trust you. Trust me, it gets better. I remember feeling so vulnerable after I was diagnosed, and I didn't even want to do simple math equations. I'm talking 2 + 2, no. No, nothing. But now, I can totally accept that I can't do the most complicated math problem, but I can work with animals. So once I realized I needed a ramp for math, I built one and have had it strengthened by other people. So even if your parents don't really care about your grades, there's still some pressure on you. For me, I also put a lot of pressure on myself to do well in every subject. If I don't get a good grade in a subject I like English or something, I automatically want to improve the next day and get the highest grade. But then I have to get myself to snap out of it, because when you take that off of yourself, you're so much happier with yourself. And that's so much better for you mentally. And when you feel better with yourself, your mental health is much better. And you feel really great. When I was diagnosed, I thought all people saw was my dyscalculia. So because I thought that's all that they saw, that's what I started to see too. Just because you have something different about you, that doesn't define you. When you reach the stage of accepting what's different about you and all your flaws, that's the best thing you can do in your entire life. The first time that I saw myself as something more than my dyscalculia was when I was taught to do a simple trick. I am, but I also am. Mine is a little like this. I'm dyscalculic, but I also am an animal lover and activist, a feminist, a best friend, a daughter, a writer, and a student. Anytime I feel like I can't do something in math, I think of that, because I don't think about the bad thing that I am. I realize that I'm so many other great things, and it doesn't really matter. So when you keep things inside for a long time, you put up walls around yourself, and it's really exhausting, and it's not good for you in any way. A lot of times, it feels like your parents won't understand anything you're going through, but if you don't talk to them, they don't want to talk to you, and it creates a whole bag thing. So it's hard to find a balance between sharing enough to keep a good, healthy relationship and not telling them anything. When you have something that holds you back, it's difficult to talk to them in a way you think they'll understand. Once you get it off your chest, whether it's asking for special help or anything else, you'll feel a lot better, I promise. I kept how I felt about myself and how I performed in math to myself for a long time, and it got me near to my breaking point. I recently learned that when people bottle up emotions, they either explode and hurt others around them, or they implode and hurt themselves. I didn't want to implode or explode, so I asked for help, and now I'm pretty happy. Here are some of the things I struggle with. I hate reading time on analog clocks. So many things rush through my head. Why? Why is it still an analog clock? Are we stuck in the 50s? It's 2015. People have bionic limbs, for crying out loud, and I'm still standing here trying to read this clock. And then I have to count all the little 5-minute interval things in between, and it ends up taking more time to figure out what time it is. And by the end of it all, I don't even care anymore. Dealing with this is pretty easy because I have a computer and I also have a phone. So I just keep them with me. Another thing that's difficult is math class. It still really makes me want to crawl into a hole, honestly. So the worst thing I have to deal with is being around people who pretend they understand what I mean. And sometimes people who are in the highest level of math at WAB will say to me, "Oh yeah, I hate math and it's really hard for me. I totally get how you feel." No. No. Stop it. Stop. I think I speak for anyone who has a learning difference when I say, don't tell us you know how I feel if you're doing well in a subject I don't and that I hate. So how I deal with that and how I suggest other people deal with it is to just go along with it. Everyone's going through something, so just don't make things worse. A little while ago, I was preparing for a math test, and I asked one of my friends if he could help me study. We were going through questions and doing all right, but when we got to a question that had a couple more steps, I kind of freaked out a little. He showed me how to do it again and said, "Okay, now you do it." That question always sends me into panic. I looked at the question and looked at it again. "Kiera, we just did this. Just do it the same way with these numbers," he said, and I nodded. I looked again and nothing even made sense. I told him that, and he said, Look, I told you I was good at math, but I never told you I was a good teacher. And showed me again. After much repetition and a couple of laughs, because sometimes he's funny and he knows how to make the best out of a situation, I got it. Of course, I thanked him because he had just spent about 10 minutes explaining one question to me that was probably like the easiest thing he'd ever seen in his entire life. But the best part was he didn't even get agitated or weirded out that I couldn't do something. So people like this are the reason that I have built a ramp, and they really help me with that. So I'm very grateful that he agreed to help me. So this is the last milestone I'm going to talk about today, and I saved it for last because it's the most important one to me. Loving yourself and finding what you love. It sounds really cliche, I know, I'm sorry. I probably sound like a teenager in a John Green novel, but just bear with me. We spend so much of our lives hating ourselves and picking out our flaws. In 4th grade, I was constantly wanting to change everything and rewire my brain. Now, I'm pretty happy. I can't do a complicated math problem, but I can tell you what a large dog with hip and leg problems would need. By the way, that dog would need a mixture of physical therapy, including stretching, running, and hydrotherapy. This circles us back to finding your passion. My passion is animals, definitely not math. But I need math to get there. Such a bummer, am I right? But once you find your passion, all the voices in your head and from other people saying how hard it's gonna be just kind of goes away. All you can focus on is pulling out all the stops and getting there. As cliche as this sounds, again, I'm sorry, John Greening you. Once you start to love yourself and love your flaws, everything falls into place. Because now that I know that my passion is animals, I never define myself by my dyscalculia. Whatever you struggle with, don't label yourself by it. If you ever need a reason not to, here it is. To quote Richard Lavoie, a famous American psychologist, labels are for jam jars. No one in here is a jam jar. You're all humans. So I challenge you to understand your differences, find what you love, and find where you belong in this world. Thank you.